3 times this week that I've been asked something that I did not learn in seminary. So I looked it up on the internet and I have an answer for you. You need to be on antibiotics 24 full hours before you come to church. Literally, I've been asked that by church members 3 times this week. We seem to have some sort of blight going around. So everybody sanitize the hands and bow to each other in good Presbyterian fashion, and we will all be fine. You do have the right to know, since I'm celebrating communion next week, this is not a cold. I have allergies. I've been cleared, so. And I tell you this, but I also want to tell you the hard part of this. A young friend of the family last week, a young man who happens to be Asian American, was asked to leave a coffee shop when he coughed this week. So we know that anxiety is very high. So let us not be afraid to look our brothers and sisters out there in the eye and say good day to them. They really need it. I'd like to invite Richard to come up. He has an announcement to make.
Good morning. All right, the elders would like to invite you to a meeting this Thursday at 7 o'clock at church. And when I mean you, I mean everybody in the congregation is welcome to come and ask to come, because this meeting will allow you to help session build the foundation for the call process for the new pastor. We will discuss very important question: who are we, and who is God calling us to be? So this will be a 90-minute meeting starting at 7 o'clock this Thursday, and you are all invited, and your voice is very important to session, so we need to hear from as many of you at this meeting as we can. We'll be discussing this very important question of who we are as a church and where we're going. So see you this Thursday, 7 o'clock, so 8:30. Thank you very much.
That is not in your written announcements, because the lesson plan was drawn up after the announcements were already printed this week. A reminder of this meeting will be going out, and more information on the process will be coming in our annual meeting today. A bulletin announcement. Our hymn of response is said to be on page 5. It's actually on page 6. That's our big bulletin announcement for the day. This Wednesday is Ash Wednesday, and there is a Ash Wednesday Bible class that I am teaching 10:30 to noon. Nobody has expressed interest in an evening session yet, but if anyone does want an evening session, I'm more than willing to teach it. Just please sign up for the class and mark evening session. Also, today is the last day to sign up for Journey to Jerusalem Lenten class. One person has signed up so far, and so if we aren't interested in doing the class, that's fine. My feelings won't be hurt. I will cancel if we don't get more people, and I will turn it into a sermon, and you will hear it anyway. But if you would like to do the class, please sign up so I know whether or not to cancel. There are a myriad of wonderful things in your bulletins. There's a game night. There's a mission dinner coming for Dakota Partnership. There's movie and munchies. And Easter activities are already being leaked into the announcements. Please check them. Also, on the tables in the narthex as you come into the building are our sign-up sheets for being an usher, being a lay leader, growing with God, and there's one other I'm missing. Well, it's out there. Oh, most importantly, coffee fellowship. So please take a look at signing up for those ministries. They're very important in our hospitality to others. Are there any other announcements I have promised people and have not made? Let us take a deep breath, leave behind the business, and be here to worship God.
If you would, please stand as you are able for our call to worship. Oh God, you bring us together in this place.
We come to be fed, to be renewed, to seek understanding.
Oh God, you challenge us in this place.
We embrace the challenge, trusting that through challenge we grow in faith.
Oh God, you are revealed in this place.
Sometimes in shining glory, sometimes in tears and struggle.
Oh God, as we worship in this place,
Refresh, renew, and challenge us so that we would see your awesomeness.
journey with us, oh God.
As we strive to walk the path of discipleship.
what it means, because it only happens once a year and it's not a major holiday. We are being asked, what do we put before God? Our first response is nothing, of course. We put nothing before God. But stop and think about this. What do we spend our time and our energy and our effort doing more than seeking God? And many answers can come to mind. At times it could be money, our occupations. It could be actually putting our families before God when God calls us to put God first. Knowing that we all may have many gods with little g's. Let us come before our holy and true Creator God and confess our sins, knowing that we will receive God's grace. Lord Jesus Christ,
We call you Lord, yet it is too easy for us to worship other things, other activities, other relationships, other gods. You tell us we cannot serve two masters, yet we spend more time focusing our energies elsewhere, diverting our time, our energy, our money, our attention away from you. Forgive us, gracious Savior, when our hearts are led astray, when we serve other gods and worship them. We turn away from our distractions and sin. Strengthen us to set our faces toward Jerusalem, to take up our cross and follow you. We pray this, counting on your grace. Amen.
the grace of God abounds. It surrounds us and is a gift from God.
We accept God's grace and give glory to God.
Please be seated.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Joel.
Joel, what are you holding in your hand?
It's too late for Valentine's. That was 2 weeks ago.
It looks like the math test we had in school today.
Yeah, it's my math test. I have to take it back to school tomorrow.
So why did you bring it home?
My mom has to sign it.
How come?
Did you get a bad grade or something?
It's not important.
Yes, it is. Who told you grades aren't important?
I heard someone say that it's learning, not grades that count.
I'm not sure that Joel's teacher would agree since he has to get the test signed.
What grade did you get?
I got a D.
Oh, that does sound pretty bad.
Maybe you could tell your mom that it stands for devoted.
More like dreadful.
Did you study for the test?
Sure, after I watched TV for a while, I studied and
You know, it's really important to be prepared.
I thought I was prepared, but I realize now that I wasn't.
That reminds me. These next few weeks are a time for us to be prepared too.
Prepared for what?
We're in Lent.
Oh, we have lots of that at home.
So do we, for the bed and especially in the clothes dryer.
No, I wasn't talking about Lent. I was talking about Lent.
I know about that. It starts on Ash Wednesday.
And it lasts for 40 days.
Why 40 days? That's a long time.
After his baptism, Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness to prepare himself for his ministry of telling everyone about God's great love for them.
So Lent is when we prepare for the Holy Week and Easter. But what do we do special during Lent to prepare?
Well, we go to church and learn about why Jesus came and how he is God's son and he died for us and rose again.
And some people give us things for Lent.
Maybe I can give up taking tests.
I think you need to give up something you really enjoy.
That makes sense. I could give up Tootsie Rolls.
Well, how much do you spend on Tootsie Rolls?
Well, a big bag costs about $5.
So you could take that $5 and give it to a charity. That would help others instead.
That's a great idea.
And that is one way we can prepare our hearts to celebrate Easter.
And I'm going to prepare a lot better for my next test, too.
I'm going to call up Hudson and Elise, and they're going to introduce the song. You may notice we don't have a lot of children here today. Please keep the rest of the children in your prayers because they are all sick. So that's why they're not here. So I'm asking for special prayers for all our little ones. Thank you. Oh, and by the way, Joel got an A+ on his actual math test.
The title of the song is Jehovah Jireh in Hebrew language. It means the Lord is my provider.
It is one of the names of God in the Old Testament. It is found in the book of Genesis chapter 2. It is an important part of the story of Abraham and Isaac. Psalm reminds us that God is always with us and will take care of us because He loves us.
The words are printed in your bulletin. We will sing it twice. Please join us on the second.
It's always a delight when the children sing, isn't it? Puts a smile on our face. Our reading is from the Hebrew Scriptures, Exodus 24:12 through 18. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and wait there, and I will give you tablets of stone. with the law and the commandment, which I have written for their instruction. So Moses set out with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up into the mountain of God. To the elders he had said, "Wait here for us until we come to you again, for Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a dispute may go to them." Then Moses went up on the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. The glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day, he called to Moses out of the cloud. Now the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people of Israel. Moses entered the cloud and went up on the mountain. Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights.
Thus, we have one of the answers to why 40 for the days in Lent. Our gospel lesson today is from Matthew, chapter 17, verses 1 through 9, the Transfiguration. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain and by themselves, and he transfigured before them. And his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and then a voice said, "This is my son, the beloved, and with him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up, don't be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." The word of God and the people of God, thanks be to God. Amen. There is a lot of mountain climbing in today's stories. A lot of mountain climbing. And there's a lot of God speaking, and there's a lot of mystery. How many of you read mysteries? Okay, like a good mystery novel. You know, one of my favorite episodes of the sitcom MASH, which is up there, this is from the actual episode, is called The Rooster Crows at Midnight. Anyone familiar with this episode? It's one of the best. The camp gets a hold of a brand new mystery whodunit novel. Very rare to get a new one in their camp. And everybody wants to read it, so they end up tearing the book apart by chapter and passing the chapters around. You had to sign up to get it. And the first person who gets to the last chapter suddenly finds out that the last page is missing. And they have absolutely no idea who done it, right? And so the show shows them placing this hysterical phone call to the author. She's 97-year-old Abigail Portersfield in Australia. Only to discover, as she points out, I'm 97 years old. I don't remember who's done it. And I don't think it ever comes to fruition. It's a made-up book. But watching the hysteria go through the campus and try to figure out who done it, it just struck me. And every time I see it, it makes me laugh. I mean, how many of you have ever stayed up late because you had to know the end of something? You had to know the mystery. You had to know if Frodo and Sam, if they got to Mordor and totally got rid of the ring. Or you stayed up because you had to know if Harry Potter lived or died in the 7th novel. I stayed up. That novel was released on a Friday night. I stayed up until 2 in the morning on Saturday to finish that novel because I knew one of my Sunday school kids was going to tell me the end. I didn't stay up and finish it. Okay, so there were a lot of us who stayed up when that book came out. And whether or not we liked the way these things ended, we felt a sense of closure at the end of the story because all of the pieces were explained and everything fell into place. Unless, of course, you are reading a certain series by George R.R. Martin. Then you simply spend your time counting all the dead bodies, never getting to the end of the story, and by the time he writes the next book, we will have to all go back and start reading over from 1 to 5. Mysteries lure us in. They're alluring. They make us ask questions that bring up new possibilities. But when you enter into a mystery in Scripture, especially one where Jesus is involved in unwinding of the threads of the mystery, and the behavior is so strange, you may find out that the answers are not revealed as clearly as in a novel or in a movie. The reason is that the mysteries of Jesus Christ are about developing faith experiences inside us. And it's about compassion being visible in our lives and not necessarily about finding answers. So let's unpack some of the mysteries surrounding the Transfiguration of Jesus and see what questions or answers we can learn about Jesus, about ourselves, and about our call to be disciples of Jesus Christ. The story begins 6 days later. Who begins a story like that? If you opened a novel and the first line was 6 days later, you would think that there were pages missing. Luckily for us, a gospel is not a novel, and we can go back and we can take a look at 3 things that happened in those 6 previous days. What happened is that Jesus spoke openly and clearly, with no mystery, about 3 things. The Son of Man has come to suffer. He will die on the 3rd day and be raised. And if we want to follow Jesus, slide 3, we have to take up our crosses daily and follow him. Those were the teachings that Jesus had unpacked for his disciples prior to going up this mountain. And luckily for us, we have the entire book, and hopefully we haven't had to rip it up into chapters and pass it around the family or the camp or whatever it is. We can go back and look at that. Jesus has given them those 3 pieces of information, and they are very confused. They are just trying to figure out what it means to be a disciple, much like we are trying to figure out what it means to be a disciple in our lives. What else do we know happened before the Transfiguration? Well, in chapter 16, verse 16, Simon Peter says to Jesus, this is an amazing moment. We blow right past it, but it's an amazing moment. Simon Peter says to Jesus, you are the Messiah. You are the Son of the living God. It is after all this emotional teaching and profession of faith in Jesus that Jesus then decides that they are ready to go up the mountain. A mountaintop is a clue in the mystery. Whenever somebody's going up the mountain, something big is going to happen. You saw it in Moses going up the mountain in the first reading. You're going to see it with Jesus. We're going to encounter, though, more mystery at the top of the mountain than answers. The Transfiguration asks us this: do we create moments and put ourselves in places where we are likely to encounter God or be enveloped in the cloud of God's presence? In the first reading, Moses is completely enveloped in cloud. God's presence is this cloud that can completely envelop us if we let it. Do we put ourselves in these situations? Now, luckily for us, given the health of most of us, we don't have to climb a mountain to do it. We can experience God's moments when we seek and act like the community of Christ, where people can interact and thus have encounters with God. Our goal as a congregation should be to provide encounters with God for people, even for the people that we don't see. I've had the opportunity to encounter some of our GA, AA, and EA people, our 12-steppers, who meet here, who many of you may have never seen. And I can tell you, they come here and they encounter God, even though they are not in the sanctuary to worship with us on Sunday mornings. They encounter mysteries. They encounter all kinds of things. And that's what this building is supposed to provide, right? Encounters with God. The Transfiguration story is told on the cusp of Lent to redirect us into the plot of being disciples and why that matters in people's lives. Do we live into the mysteries of our faith? Jesus traveled up a mountain to pray. Do we build our life on prayer so that when we go out into the world, we are in tune with God and looking to encounter God in flat, unlikely places? I mean, let's face it, we live in Illinois. How many mountains are we really going to encounter? We need to be able to find God in the flat, unlikely places. Do we walk around the world responding to people as if we embody what Jesus taught the 8 days before he climbed that mountain? Are we willing to go through life picking up the cross of burdens of the world and serving as disciples because we believe the witness of the Transfiguration? Are we willing to put the desired actions of God before the desires of our own lives? That's what really it comes down to a lot of time. Are we willing to put the desired actions of God before the desires of our own lives? Have you ever asked any of your pastors in any point of your life what made them become a pastor? It's an interesting question. Find your pastors, ask them that question. Many of them might have a Moses and the burning bush story. But many of them might give you an answer that sounds something like this: I really didn't have a choice. The call happened, and I really didn't have a choice. Another couple of mysteries of this story. What's with the change of appearance that has come over Jesus? To kind of draw your attention to that, I've already switched to my black robe for Lent with a white stole. Jesus' whole appearance is described as completely changing. That moment of transfiguration, Jesus is being lifted up, and the Bible tells us while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. And we got to wonder, hey, what's going on with that? And by the way, isn't it kind of weird that Moses and Elijah have shown up? The whole thing is a strange mystery. The change in appearance bears witness that Jesus is at the same time both human and divine. That's why his appearance changes. God is reaching out into our senses with this story. And we hear God's voice declare who Jesus is, just as we did at his baptism. And the way Jesus appears is enlightened, so we can see he is the Son of God. And when he is transfigured and lifted up, he will then be brought back down to earth in humanness again. Jesus is changed for a moment. And the 3 disciples, he's changed for them forever. Here we are visually shown that Jesus is not just a prophet like Elijah, or a teacher of the law like Moses, but he is the Son of God, enlightened with the true light of God. God is appealing to our senses of sight and of hearing and bearing witness to God. And now when Jesus is speaking of death and resurrection, he's doing it with the premier prophet Elijah and with the representative of the law, Moses. They are standing behind him. By discussing his death and resurrection with Moses and Elijah, all 3 of them are bearing witness to who Jesus is, all the way back through the beginning to Genesis. Think about what a powerful witness that must have been for those 3 disciples who tried to take in. Here's another mystery. Peter suddenly wants to become part of Habitat for Humanity. He wants to build a shelter, and we're all going, what's that about? We don't normally build houses when we have moments with God, or do we? The witness to our human need to build shelters and houses is twofold. It's to create and define and preserve our glimpses of God. If you've ever been to Israel or Palestine, you know that the place is filled with churches. Anywhere that somebody thinks something happened, they have built a church right on top of it. And it is filled with beautiful, holy places that call us in. And Peter and the disciples are offering to do no less for that moment, to build a structure that marks that this is the place where God was revealed as both human and divine at the same time, and all these teachings come together. Only it just can't be contained. A lot of people believe that the Transfiguration happened on Mount Tabor, where there today is a Franciscan church called the Church of the Transfiguration. And a Greek Orthodox Church of the Transfiguration is also part of there. And it's filled with beautiful representations of the Transfiguration, just like the front of your bulletin cover today, that beautiful artwork. Look around this room. I mean, we're Reformed Christians. It's not overly overt, but this room is filled with our images of God being divine and human. This is what we do. We mark places. We create our own cloud of God's presence. And we try to be who God called us to be. But when the shadow of the cloud of God's presence no longer engulfs us, when the church marking the holy sites of our faith are crumbled or controlled by religious and political confrontations, how do we feed our faith so that it grows? I don't know if any of you have ever been to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. It is a church that is divided into 4 sections, and a different part of Christianity controls each of the 4 sections. And believe me, when I say control, I mean control. The key to the church is not held by a Christian. It's held by a Muslim family that comes out, a member of the family is designated in each generation, that comes out and unlocks the door. Do you know why? The Christians fought over the key. So, when our churches crumble and we can't even maintain our own sense of identity, how do we feed our faith so that it grows? By not looking for a mountain, by coming down the mountain, by going beyond what our senses take in and realize that God is a mystery and we need to be open to God's call to act out that mystery. We don't know when it'll happen or where that we will be called to do something. The answer is not pretending that we can solve every mystery, that we can answer everything in the scriptures with a good psychological or logical reason. And we can't, as a congregation, pretend that we can solve the whole problem of homelessness and violence and earthquakes. The answer is by acting like a small part of a large community of Christians that points to who Christ is and responds to the needs of others as called. God specifically says in this story, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." Listen. Listen to everything he said in the 6 days before this story. Listen to everything he says on flat ground. Listen to everything that happens on the mountaintop. And then come back to the flat ground and respond as disciples. Now, we've unpacked a lot of information, and we've answered some questions, and I probably have asked more questions and given more answers. But that is the call. Let us go out into the world to live into the questions that being a disciple raises in the world. Let us not worry about what we cannot answer. Let us simply take up our cross, go out into the world, and do what we can to respond to the transfiguration and respond to God's love. Amen. Our sermon response for today, well, first we have our affirmation of faith. So if you would open up to the affirmation of faith, and please stand as you are able. We will lift ancient words into current meaning. I believe in
God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, and in Jesus Christ, his only Son, our Lord, who was conceived by the Holy Ghost, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, was crucified, dead, and buried. He descended into hell, and the third day he rose again from the dead. He ascended into heaven, and sitteth on the right hand of God the Father Almighty. From thence he shall come to judge the quick and the dead. I believe in the Holy Ghost, the Holy Catholic Church, the communion of saints, the forgiveness of sins, the resurrection of the body, and life everlasting. Amen.
And our hymn of response is on page 6 of your bulletin, Holy Ground. Please be seated. As our ushers get microphones ready, season of the church year, we are closing out and lingering from Epiphany and headed into Lent. We are between the joy of your appearing and the thought of the horror of your undoing at the hands of those who would not or could not embrace your way of life. Perhaps we, like Peter and James and John, wait for your appearing in dazzling light and unmistakable clarity. We are in need of a glimpse of Jesus, who is the way through the mists and the mess of this life. We pray for our planet, which is fragile. We wonder how long we can simply take what we need or want from it with little regard for what it costs your creation. We wonder if the planet is crying out for relief and floods that are really tears, and earthquakes that try to shake our consciousness, and gales that blow sighs too deep for words. We ask your blessings upon this earth and our consciousness to carry forth. We're in need of glimpses of Jesus, who is the truth that love is stronger than hate, that peace is possible, that love is stronger than illness, and life can emerge even in the midst of hurt. We lift up all of those who have been named in our earlier joys and concerns. And we ask you to surround them, to walk with them, to reveal your presence to them in their own moment of transfiguration. We are in need of glimpses of Jesus, who is the life, inviting us to follow his footsteps and to tread the way that he tread, to counter injustice with love, and inviting us to take upon ourselves our cross and follow him. We give thanks for the good news that unfolds in the world as people dream your dreams, follow your nudging, imagine what is possible, and seek you in the faces of the people they encounter each day. Perhaps, oh God, it is the only transfiguration we really need, to see you in everyone's face. We ask you to draw us forward to the rhythm of Lent as it begins to unfold next week. Open us to your light that we might see ourselves clearly, with all our fears and faults and faith, with our desires and dreams and duties. Help us to see our journey as the place where you are at. And like Peter and James and John, may we come down from the mountain and set one foot in front of the other in your name and for your sake. May we follow in Jesus' footsteps, starting with our words, as we lift up the prayer that he taught his disciples. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
This time I'd like to ask our ushers to please come forward and collect our tithes and offerings.
From the cloud you speak, what was there now is seen. Jesus, the image of Thank
annual meeting is beginning with a meal. So let us go from this room to the next room to begin the celebration of what has passed in 2019 and what is to come in 2020. I'll go first.
I'm not going to be able to tomorrow. So, we can do it after the congregational meeting would be the only other option. So if Lynn is in equip, I can ask her to help count. Go ahead.